Today we're going to talk about the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. So we're going to talk about kind of its steady decline in the third century, and then we'll get into some theories about what caused it to decline. It's probably a mixture of things. It's never just one thing, especially with an empire that large. So, all right, here we go. So, a long period of unrest followed the death of Marcus Aurelius. So, Marcus Aurelius was the last good emperor in 180. So, this was the end of the Pax Romana. And so Rome was ruled by the Severans after this, and their motto was pay the soldiers and ignore everyone else. So obviously, they cared a lot about their citizenry. And then from 235 to 284, Rome was basically ruled by whoever had the army to seize it. A bunch of generals will come in with an army, and then they would take over Rome. And then another general would come in with an army, take over Rome, and there was just kind of a cycle of that. So from in this like 49-year span, you see 22 different emperors, and many of them died very violent deaths because they were being invaded by somebody else with an army. But at the same time, the Roman Empire is actually being invaded by the Persians and various Germanic peoples. So this is going to not only weaken Rome itself because there's no consistency. It's also going to weaken the empire on the outsides because they keep getting invaded. So these invasions and then civil wars and then, of course, a plague is going to happen as well, are going to cause the Roman economy to collapse in the 3rd century. So trade and small industry is going to decline, and then obviously there's going to be a labor shortage because there was a plague and people died from the plague. So farm production will also decline because, one, there's a labor shortage, and two, the invaders come through and they ransack the fields, and so there's no crops to sell. And so money was short, but Rome needed soldiers. So Rome hired Germanic soldiers that had no loyalty to Rome, and this was a big issue because if you're going to have an army, they need to be loyal to you. So this map right here shows the different invasion routes of different people, different types of people who were coming in. So you got the Germanics, the Huns, the Slavs that were coming through. And we'll talk more about the specific Germanic groups like the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals. They're all going to come through, and many of them are going to sack Rome. So at the end of the 3rd century and the beginning of the 4th century, there's going to be two emperors that are going to try to revive Rome. And they're going to found a state called the Late Roman Empire. So they're going to create a new government structure and a rigid economic and social system, and they're going to start a new state religion, or adopt a new state religion that is Christianity, which we talked about in the last set of notes. So Diocletian, that's this guy right here, Diocletian ruled from 284 to 305, and he said the empire's too large for one man to rule it. So what he does is he divides the empire into 4 sections, and then each section has its own ruler, including him, and he had the biggest chunk, and he had the most military, therefore he had the most power. And then Constantine is going to be the Roman emperor after him. That's this guy here. He's going to extend many of Diocletian's policies. Remember also, Diocletian, he is the one that ends the persecution of the Christians, and then Constantine actually becomes Christian. So that's going to be important too. So both expanded the bureaucracy and enlarged the army to 500,000 troops. This is a big issue because by doing this, they're draining the treasury. So whenever the treasury goes, that means prices go up. Okay, so Diocletian tried to issue strict wage and price controls to stop that inflation. This is not going to work. Anytime a government in the history of anything has ever tried to control prices, it has not worked. Okay, it's better when governments just stay out of the economy. But both emperors issued edicts that forced people to stay in their jobs. And so this is where we start to see certain professions become hereditary. So like being a baker. So if my dad was a baker, then he's going to teach me how to bake, and then I would be a baker. And then small free farmers were in debt to the large landowners, and they're just going to continue a cycle of debt. And then eventually this debt is going to lead into what's going to be known as feudalism, which we'll talk about in the next unit. So 324, Constantine became the sole ruler of Rome, and his biggest project was constructing a new capital city in the east on the site of the city of Byzantium, which is on the shores of the Bosporus. And this city is very important because it is very good for defense because it's right between the Black Sea, and then there's the Bosporus Strait, which connects the Black Sea to the Aegean Sea. And so he is going to rename Byzantium Constantinople, that is present day Istanbul and present day Turkey. Okay? But it's basically going to be New Rome. So Constantine is going to try to make it look really similar to Rome. Okay, so like the architecture in that is going to be very Roman. And so he's going to fill it with a forum, palaces, an amphitheater, and then other signs of Roman and civic glory. And it's going to become the center of the Eastern Roman Empire, which eventually we'll talk about will become the Byzantine Empire, okay, named after Byzantium. And Constantinople will be its capital. And that's actually going to continue all the way through the 15th century. So the policies of Diocletian and Constantine were based on coercion and control, but in the long run, they really stifled the vitality of Rome that they needed to revive. So the Roman Empire continued for another 100 plus years, split basically in two, where you have Rome as the capital in the west and then Constantinople, the capital in the east. In the mid 300s, the Huns are going to move into Eastern Europe, and they're going to push the Visigoths south into Roman territory. Now, the Visigoths, they were Roman allies at first, but they're going to revolt and defeat a Roman army in 378. And so what's going to happen is a lot of these people are going to see kind of a weakness in the Roman army, and more Germans are going to come into Roman territory as a result. So in 410, the Visigoths are going to come in and they're going to sack Rome. And then in 455, the Vandals are going to come in and they're going to sack Rome as well. So, excuse me, in 476, the emperor was disposed by the Germanic leader. And then this date is basically usually regarded as the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And then, like I said before, the Eastern Roman Empire will continue on. It will be known as the Byzantine Empire, and that's not going to fall until about 1,000 years later. So there's many theories that have been proposed to explain the fall of Rome. So one is that Christianity weakened Rome's military virtues. Okay, so when you're told that killing is wrong and that you don't get into heaven when you do that, that you need to love others as you love yourself, when you're looking across the line, you see another that you're supposed to love, it's hard to kill that person. Okay, so that's going to be an issue. Another one is that Roman values declined as non-Italians gained prominent positions. So more people came into the government, and then they didn't necessarily always like the Roman policies, and so they would just change them. Another theory is that lead poisoning from the water pipes and vessels actually caused the mental decline, and so they weren't as smart as they used to be. Slavery also held Rome back from advancing technologically. Okay, and this is actually something we see in the American South as well, that in the South, when there was slavery, they didn't advance technologically like the North did. And so the North, when the Civil War happens, obviously had a lot more advantages than the South. And then Rome's political system proved unworkable. It just wasn't. It wasn't workable to have one emperor and then two emperors. It just was too big. The bureaucracy was too big. It just didn't work. So, all right, and that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you all have a wonderful day.